Summa Silver. Galen McNamara is joining us here. Really excited to have him on, get an update from the project in Nevada, but also they have an exciting project in New Mexico. I had a chance to catch up with Galen last week, 10 days ago in Las Vegas at the one-to-one mining conference. Super insightful. Can't wait to see if you have any updates, because I know you've been to the project right after. So good to see you.
Hi, Kai. Hi, good to see you too. And thanks for including me in your show. It's nice to be here, be back, and share the stage with a great group of companies. There's been some really good presentations so far. So I'll start from the beginning on Summa Silver. Summa Silver is a company that myself and partners founded less than 2 years ago now. Time's been flying, but it's still been less than 2 years, where we're really focusing on the southwestern United States and these high-grade, historic, Wild West silver districts in the southwestern United States. So just to get the legalese out of the way here, of course, I will be making forward-looking statements. The fact that I think I'm the second largest shareholder of the company behind Eric Sprott probably means my statements might be extra forward-looking, but that just is because I'm quite positive on this, obviously. So yeah, like I was saying, Summa Silver, really focusing on these Wild West historic mining districts in the southwestern U.S. The first project is in Nevada. The second project is in New Mexico. And, when I was starting this company and I was looking at this first project in Nevada that I'll get to shortly here, I just thought to myself, what's a good example of a win if we're going to go ahead and really do this and spend the years that it's going to take, building a good value and a win for myself and my shareholders. And I thought to myself, well, what are some good examples? And the company I kept coming back to, of course, was the classic was Silvercrest Mining. They went into one of these old districts in Mexico in 2016, executed nearly perfectly on all fronts. And, I'm fan number one. And, you fast forward to today, they've taken a $20 million market cap to a market cap that's, touching $1.5 billion. So that's the type of shot that, I want to take if I'm going to spend years of my life doing something. Cap structure of this company, currently 77 million shares outstanding, about 100 million fully diluted. Current share price is actually $1.40, not $1.30. We've been having some good trading days. We recently closed about a couple months ago, $11.5 million financing at 90 cents with a half warrant at $1.20. So really, we're very, very well financed to go out and execute 2 large drill programs this year, which is what we're doing. I'll just point to the investors. Eric Sprott owns 18% of the company. We also welcomed First Majestic Silver into the last round of financing. They participated as well. And other than that, we're very, very tightly held, with management, insiders, and close associates owning about 30%, institutions and high net worth investors owning about 25%. So, I think we're very leveraged to really participate in some, what we all hope to be are going to be some strong precious metals markets going forward for the rest of this year. I don't think I need to tell anyone on this call, about, the dangers of inflation, what's going on there now. But, silver especially has very recently become a little bit of an ESG metal, where a little bit of silver goes into every electric vehicle, a little bit of silver goes into every solar panel. So when you start producing these things on a very large scale, it takes large amounts of silver. And a lot of people don't know that something like 60 to 70% of silver consumption globally every year is for industrial purposes. So you've got this, number one, you've got, the inflation story, and you've got, a industrial demand story going on. But there's also a story of shortage in which, you've really got declining production generally, especially if you look forward and projecting what, the needs are going to be on a supply demand basis. It might be the perfect storm for what, we all, I think, hope is significant appreciation in the price of silver and both precious metals and gold as well. The last thing I'd just like to point out in this slide is that we've got about last summer, we got our first analyst coverage. So Research Capital is covering us and has a buy target on us of $2.50. Okay, so Summa Silver, where are we going this year? We've been a really interesting discovery drilling story over the last 2 years with some high grade results that I'll get to shortly. But now it's time for us to really take that next step and push towards mineral resources on both of our properties. I'll just highlight here, what we've got here is that really these high grade silver stories really command premium valuation. So if I look at Summa and I say, okay, at a share price of 130, we've got a market cap of about 100 million. Our typical intersection grades are 400 to 700 grams per ton silver equivalent. And when I say silver equivalent, it's just silver and gold. That's it. There's no lead or zinc or anything like that. We don't know what our mineral resources are going to be, but we have a pretty good idea of grade at that 400 to 700 grams per ton silver equivalent. Sometimes we get grades that are much higher, up to 10,000 plus, but, sometimes we get grades that are lower too, 200-300. So I just start looking here and comparing, a group of, I'll say peers, or more like companies that, we aspire to be, and that they're more advanced than us. Where if I take the grade and I compare that to the average market cap per ounce, you get somewhere in the neighborhood of $5.10. So, hey, you've got some really high valuations up here with MAG and Silver, but of course, MAG and Silvercrest, excuse me, but of course, they're much more advanced than us with $5.88 per ounce, $12.21 per ounce. But, I would like to compare us to a company like Vizsla Silver, $2.53 per ounce, or like Dolly Varden, $3.83. So, shooting in that neighborhood and trying to relate that to market cap, if we can come up with a valuation, which I think is fair, of somewhere between $3 and $4 an ounce, it doesn't take that many ounces for us to really, really highlight that a market cap of 100 million is quite low. And I even compare that here on the bottom part of this slide, where you've got Summa Silver here at 100. I mean, we start looking at the very recent successes. I'll highlight Vizsla Silver, which of course, those guys have been very successful down in Mexico recently, and recently put out their first mineral resource. I mean, they're sitting at a market cap of 350 million. Okay, so switching gears and talking about the properties. The first property I'm going to talk about is the Mogollon property in New Mexico. And this one is named after one of the old Spanish governors of New Mexico, going back to, I think, the 1600s. This one was the largest historic silver producer in New Mexico. 16.4 million ounces of silver produced and 340,000 ounces of gold at grades of about 800 grams per ton silver equivalent. This one produced between the 1880s and 1942, and production only shut down in 1942 because that's when the US went into World War II. So that's when all silver and gold mining stopped in the United States. So in that regard, it really is an under the radar opportunity, in that everything I've seen in this district is that mineralization is still quite widespread, and there's still a lot of, to use a cliche, juice left to squeeze. So in that regard, it's a story of unfinished business where we can come in and drill a large amount of meters, somewhere in the neighborhood of 25,000 meters, this year as we really charge towards that first resource. And I think have some very, very strong success, because we're following up on some drilling that was done in the 1980s that, hey, although we can't use that drilling in a quote unquote compliant resource estimate, what it does give us is the perfect roadmap to follow up on very efficiently. So here's just a long section of the first target that we're drilling. We've got 4 holes into this so far with assay results out, 2 holes pending, and are about to start drilling again probably in 60 days or so. It's not rocket science in this situation, which for me is very nice, because I see I'm a geologist. If that isn't apparent yet, it will be very soon. Where, hey, we can look around this old Consolidated mine, and here the stopes produced somewhere in the neighborhood of, although we don't really know, somewhere in the neighborhood of 1 or 2 million ounces at grades of 660 grams per ton silver equivalent. It's quite easy for us to step down plunge. And so far with these 4 holes that we've released, we've got some really good results. The highlight being 450 grams per ton silver equivalent in hole 4 over 11.6 meters. But really all of these holes have hit significantly. Even hole 3, which is right here, hole 3 deviated substantially and ran into an old stope where we unfortunately lost the hole. Usually we can bridge these things, but this one we weren't able to. And that still hit, hey, 185 grams per ton silver equivalent over 14 meters. So even that, to me, opens up, the wall rocks of the old mine in and around the Consolidated stopes. But really, what we're doing here is we're drilling out an area that's 500 meters by 300 meters, where we've got 9 historic holes that I'm not showing here, but there's 9 holes in there, where the average true thickness was between 8 and 9 meters, and the average grade was about 500 grams per ton silver equivalent. So it doesn't really take, rocket science to do the math there and start crunching numbers to figure out what the ounce potential is. The last thing I'll just point out on this slide is that with these 2 pending holes, which I expect to probably put out in the next couple of weeks at the latest, hole 5 by far looks like the strongest hole, in that there was about a good 30 meters of quartz veining with very, very visible mineralization in it that I'm going to show you in the next slide. So here are a few photos from the core, and these are available on our website as well. All of the core photos from all 6 holes we've drilled on this project are available on the website, where we've got veins that range anywhere from 10 to 15 meters thick to 50 meters thick. And then these are some of the pictures. This is what some of the very mineralized core looks like, where you've got on the left some very juicy looking quartz veining, but really just to concentrate on the zoomed in 2 pictures on the right, where you can very much see these classic epithermal textures. And not to get too far into the weeds here, but when you're a geo and you start seeing these textures with this black sulfide mineralization and this type of system, it's really easy to get very excited. But even zooming out here and looking at the project, this is a map of the project, where what we were looking at before was just this green square, an underground side view of this green square. It's about 500 meters of strike. In total, there's 35 kilometers of strike, of vein and perspective structure on the property. So we didn't have any data this summer on what could be left at surface. So the first thing we did is, as a group, the geologists went out here and crawled all over these hills like ants and just sampled everything. Took several hundred samples and found that, hey, there's still a lot of mineralization left at surface here on the property. So we've got, 2,000 grams per ton plus in outcrop here, 1,500 there, 1,300 there, 1,000 there. I don't need to read these all out, but it's pretty obvious here that over an area of about 3.5 kilometers by 3.5 kilometers, there's still multiple mineralized quartz carbonate veins at surface, most of which have never been drilled. So as we develop this project and as we develop these targets, the plan is really just to leapfrog from one to the next as we build ounces as quickly as we can. Okay, so that is the property in New Mexico, but our original property is called the Hughes property in Nevada. And this one is interesting in that, Nevada is known as the Silver State, that if you come into Nevada, you're driving into Nevada, it still says, "Welcome to Nevada, the Silver State." And that's because of these 2 Wild West historic mining districts. The first one being the Comstock Lode, that's up by Reno. But the second one is the historic Tonopah district. So we have the eastern half of the historic Tonopah district. Total production from the entire district between about 1900 and 1950 was 175 million ounces of silver and almost 2 million ounces of gold at grades of about 1,260 grams per ton silver equivalent. So really, really high grade, significant past producer that, hey, before us and our neighbors to the west over at BlackRock Silver came to town at really about the same time. No modern exploration. So those are the types of opportunities, of course, that we're really, really pursuing. We started drilling this property in the summer of 2020, so less than 2 years ago now, and I've got some pretty interesting results. 4,400 grams per ton silver equivalent over 2.8 meters. 3,760 grams per ton silver equivalent over 2.5 meters. But really zooming out, we've drilled 4 target areas over a strike length of 3.5 kilometers and hit on every one. Grades over 1,000 grams per ton, pretty common. So it's really obvious that there's a lot of juice left to squeeze here. Very briefly, here's a map of the property, the town of Tonopah, Nevada, I'm circling. It's right on the highway between Reno and Las Vegas, about 3 hours drive either way. And of course, all of that good infrastructure that's associated with the town, power lines, etc. So I'm just going to zoom into this area on the next slide, right where I'm circling. Some high-grade drill results on the left. I don't need to read those all out. But what I like to concentrate on this slide is the map on the right, where we've drilled these 4 target areas over the 3.5 kilometers. And excuse me, this is a little bit too small to see, but that's 3.5 kilometers. Where the 2 targets on the left, we're focusing in the historic part of the mining district, where we're looking at extensions of veins that the old timers never mined, parallel structures that the old timers never got to. And that's where we've had the bulk of our success so far. When you see numbers like 2.8 meters of 4,400 grams per ton, including 0.9 of almost 12,000 grams per ton. And that's really this year where we're focusing on building ounces. 2 rigs are turning on this property right now over here at the Murray target. And we're going to really concentrate on expanding, I should say, really, at Murray and at Belmont. So that's the 2 targets on the left. The 2 targets on the right, those are more exploration flavored targets where we're looking for an extension of the entire district. Both of those targets we've drilled last year and the year before, 2020 and 2021. Both of them have hit. The most important one, I think, is the Ruby discovery, where hole 10 in 2020 hit 6 zones of mineralization. Some of really the strongest hydrothermal alteration that I've ever seen. But it was a little bit like, it felt like it was teasing us a little bit in that, hey, the best zone was 2 meters of about 522 grams per ton silver equivalent, with a little high grade kicker in there of 0.5 meters of 1,600 grams per ton silver equivalent. But everything about, the holes that we've drilled out there, and there's 3 holes out there now, all of them have hit quartz vein and some amount of mineralization, but really good looking quartz vein, where we're out there and, hey, we've discovered that the veins extend 1.3 kilometers past where the old mining was. That's a really, significant thing to confirm. And now what we need to do really is, hey, where do these veins out there, where do they blow out to 10, 15 meters? Because the best veins in this district, especially around the Belmont mine, those veins got to be, 10 to 15 meters thick at 1,000 to 1,500 grams per ton silver equivalent. So that's really the prize out here. That's the big swing we're trying to take. And the next slide I'm just going to show is just an underground view of this area here, where right around the Ruby discovery. So here it is. Here are the 3 holes we've drilled. And then here are some of the highlights of what the results have been. But really, we're just on the flanks of a very large geophysical anomaly. And not to get too far into the weeds here, but we ran this IP survey last summer. Chargeability high, this orange blob, we'll say, corresponds probably to pyrite alteration. So that's what you're looking for, say, at a zone distal to where the mineralization would be. This is the haystack, and then you need to still find the needle. Whereas the resistivity high is more of the zone proximal alteration, where you're looking at silicification around the quartz veins. And I won't get too much more into details other than that. But what I will say to end this slide is that, hey, look, this is 2 kilometers along strike from one of the best silver districts in the US. There's a big anomaly that has not been tested by drill holes. And then where we have drilled the flanks of it, we've hit, a lot of smoke. So this is something that we'll be testing pretty soon. And then the last slide here, Kai, I know you want to cut me off, but this is the last one I'll talk about. That's fine. How does Tonopah compare to some of the other famous districts, silver districts, that the Mexicans have been mining going back like 500 years? Well, if you take Tonopah, produced over a strike length of 4 kilometers and that many ounces, well, you've got Guanajuato, Sandy Mass, 18 kilometers, 7 kilometers of produced length, and, way more ounces. Okay, that makes sense, right? Well, I'm just representing that mined strike length with the length of this white bar, where if you take Tonopah, 4 kilometers, you add 1.3 kilometers onto it, which is where we hit at Ruby, and even let it run past that, well, it fits in quite nicely with how big these districts can get when they get to be truly world-class. So I think that's a good place to end. And yeah, thanks very much, everyone.
No, fantastic. No, Galen, thanks for running us through the story. Quite excited. Drilling in New Mexico, when do we start there? What's the timeline?
It'll probably restart again in the 6 to 8 week neighborhood, somewhere in there.
Fantastic. All right, we got a question here in the Q&A, and it is, when will we see some Howard Hughes silver bars? What's the plan? Sounds like an insider.
That's a good question. I'll have to see who asked that question, but I would love to see some Howard Hughes silver bars or silver coins even. The one thing I don't talk about in this is that there's somebody honking a horn outside on the street. Excuse me. I think it's a car alarm going off. But one of the things that I don't talk about in this presentation is that we've got some tailings on the project. It's probably in the neighborhood of 2 to 3 million ounces of silver equivalent at grades of 70 grams per ton in silver equivalent, somewhere in that neighborhood. So there may be some reprocessing potential there, in which case I'd love to make some Howard Hughes silver bars.
Fantastic. Yeah, just maybe big bulk sample or something. And
that's right.
And put that out. Fantastic. No, I think that's pretty much it. We had a couple questions. We have a question is I've been trying to research it a little bit. It says your stock has been falling for a year now, but do you have problems with Kazakhstan? And I'm trying to find the Kazakhstan angle, and I couldn't find it. So
No, that's not. That must be someone else.
okay, that's just like
Yeah.
stretching my head. Like I've been in this story. Like I used to own Summa for a while as well, and no, Kazakhstan never came up.
No,
So
not on this. not on
okay.
this.
Okay,
Yeah.
just making sure I didn't miss anything. So fantastic. No, Galen, really appreciate you joining us. Thanks so much for running us through. Good luck drilling. New Mexico sounds really exciting. I'm personally a big fan of the town of Tonopah. Been there a bunch
too.
of times.
Me too.
So
Well, listen, Kai, lots to come this year. We're very aggressively drilling 2 projects, and all of the holes are going into veins of known high grade mineralization. That's it.
who
That's it.
doesn't
That's
like
our
high
goal this
grade?
year. That's what
So
we're concentrating on.
fantastic. Galen, thanks so much. And I hope to see you soon. Like we're both in Vancouver. So let's grab a beer.
Sounds great. Sounds
Fantastic.
great.
Awesome. Appreciate it. Thanks for joining us.